Thank you, Pastor Mark. It truly is an honor to be able to just speak when he's not here. It is just a great privilege that he just encourages us to come up here and to give the word. So thank you, Pastor Mark. He is, as he said, believe he and Pastor Deb are already in D.C. getting ready for our Foursquare convention. So looking forward to seeing him a little bit later. And as John said, today is Memorial Day, so today is the day that or tomorrow actually, but is the day that we honor those who have given the ultimate sacrifice of laying down their lives in service for our country and for our freedom. So if we could just for a moment, could we just thank those who have served and ultimately given their whole lives, but also thank you for those of you that are here that serve in the military and those who have gone overseas and have served in that capacity. Thank you so much for the sacrifice that you have made for us here. One last thing is just youth summer camp is right around the corner. So we have Wednesday is the last day to sign up. So if you have a student that is between 7th grade and 12th grade who would love to go to camp, we would love to take them with us on June 24th through the 28th. The cost is only $125. You can sign up at the information center, but the deadline for that is this Wednesday, so make sure that you get signed up for that. Cool? Cool? There it is. All right. So I just wanted to open up this morning and just kind of telling you a little dream that I had maybe about 2 weeks ago. Is that cool? Cool. All right. Thank you. So in Acts 2, it says that in the end times, young men will see visions and old men will dream dreams. And this middle-aged man right here had a dream about 2 weeks ago. In my dream, Melanie and I were the proud owners of a litter of cat turtles. Yeah, right? A cat and a turtle put together. It's a curdle. So imagine a cat. Imagine like an animal, like it's the cat body with the nimbleness and the quickness of a cat, but with a turtle shell. Brilliant. It's awesome. I don't know why God didn't create these. But in my dream, they were there. And it was so awesome to watch these little curdles running around, and I was like trying to spot which one, which curdle am I going to keep, So I found this one that was like, he was really fast on his feet, because not all curdles, because if you have a bigger shell, you're a little slower, right? So this one was like the perfect size, and he had the right size shell, and he was quick and he was nimble. So I figured like if he's like in an alley scrap somewhere, he'd be able to take care of himself. And I just loved that curdle. And when I woke up from the dream, I was really bothered because I was imagining something that took me to a place when I was like a kid and my imagination was just going wild. And so it took me there to that place where it's like, where I imagined these things that just don't exist. And so it took me back also to, you guys have all had crazy dreams, right? Yeah? When I was a kid, I had this crazy dream. You guys remember Michael Jackson? Thriller? I grew up sort of in the 80s, and so he released Thriller. I had this dream that in my dream, I woke up, and I looked out the window, and Michael Jackson was standing in my neighbor's yard looking up at me singing Thriller. It was the creepiest thing, but it wasn't just Michael Jackson. It was a 6-foot head of Michael Jackson, and tiny heads surrounding, singing Thriller to me. And it took me back. So this dream about the curdles took me back to when I was a kid, having these crazy dreams, and it was just so good because it reminded me of like sort of what it means to be a kid again. And if you read Scripture much at all, you know that we are all called to be as children. It says in Matthew 18, this is Jesus' words. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" He called a little child to him and placed the child among them. And he said, "Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me." So if we're going to at all inherit the kingdom of heaven, we have to be, just as Jesus said, like children. Like I know Proverbs says that when I became a man, I put away the childish things. So yes, there's a level of maturity and responsibility that as adults we have to come to. But we need to always make sure that we hang on to that element of what it truly means to be a child. And so what I would like for us to do, we're going to get into John 13 here in a minute. But if you could, Imagine back to when you were a kid and maybe whatever hat you used to wear. Maybe you had a fireman's hat. Maybe it was a princess tiara. Maybe it was just a regular baseball cap with like Hot Wheels or like your favorite sports team or whatever. Well, so put that hat on real quick. Put it on backwards because that's what kids do. And right now, if we could look at John 13 through the lens of what it means to be a child, we'll go back to this at the end. But please, if you would, with me, go to John 13. And what we're going to do is we're going to read through verses 1 through 17 straight through. And then after that, we're just going to go back and start breaking it up a little bit. So John 13, starting in verse 1, it says, "It was just before the Passover feast. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. The evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, 'Lord, are you going to wash my feet?' Jesus replied, 'You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand.' 'No,' said Peter, 'you shall never wash my feet.' Jesus answered, 'Unless I wash you, you have no part with me.' 'Then, Lord,' Simon Peter said, 'not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well.' Jesus answered, 'A person who has had a bath needs only to wash his feet. His whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you.' For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he had said not everyone was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. 'Do you understand what I have done for you?' he asked them. 'You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done to you. I tell you the truth, no servant is greater than his master, nor a messenger greater than the one who sent. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do what I do.'" So let's just break down real quick what's happening. There's a very practical side to foot washing. So if you're walking around Jerusalem, Israel at this time, it's a very dirty, dusty place, and your shoes, you have like the open-toed shoes, you're just sandals. So you're walking around this all day long. And so at this particular meal, the disciples are sitting at a table that is probably about maybe 1.5 feet high. And so when they're sitting there, they have to kind of, can't do this without a chair, but sort of be reclined a little bit, right? So that you're kind of sitting on your side, resting your elbow on the table, and your feet are just kind of kicked out right in front of you. And so the practical side is this, is that if you're sitting there at a meal and you're about maybe 6 inches to a foot away from somebody else's feet and they haven't been washed recently, you will lose your appetite. Because it's just kind of gross, right? So it's very customary to have your feet washed before a meal like this. So it's very practical. You can imagine how feet would get dirty. Now, the impractical side to this particular occasion is that this is the master washing his disciples' feet. This has never been done before. This doesn't happen within the culture. Those who would wash the feet, they would be the lowliest people within the household. So it was completely appropriate for children to wash their parents' feet within this culture. It would have been appropriate for wives to wash their husbands' feet within this culture. It would have been appropriate for disciples to wash their master or their teacher's feet. That would have been appropriate, but it was completely inappropriate that Jesus was doing this. They had never seen this before. It's very impractical. Now, there's another side to this foot washing that we need to understand. So this is the Passover meal. Jesus is hours away from being arrested. He's about 12 hours away or so away from being taken to the cross and crucified. And so this is the last time that Jesus gets to get together with his disciples and give them a message. Like imagine like you knew that you were about to die. What would you tell your loved ones? So Jesus takes it upon himself to give them one of the most important principles, messages that they will ever hear, all about servanthood and what it means to serve other people. There's so many things going on here, so let's just start getting into this. First off, how does this even fit into our lives today? How do we apply this principle of foot washing? Well, there's two people that are specifically mentioned within the text that we just read. The one was Judas. And so really, when you look at it, there, Judas was this guy. In verse 13, it says, the evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. So Judas was this guy who, it didn't matter what Jesus did. Judas's heart was set on betraying Jesus. Think about it. Scholars believe that Judas probably never, ever got it. So he saw all the miracles. He saw all the healings. He heard all the teachings, but yet he didn't get Jesus. There are people in this world that just will never get Jesus. They will never become a follower. Jesus could come down from the sky, manifest a ham sandwich right in front of them, give it to them. They will eat the sandwich and say, forget you, Jesus. I don't want any part of you. There are just some people who are so bent on rejecting Christ. And there's not much we can do about that. But I would guess that there's probably nobody in here like that. The very fact that you're here today, you are in some pursuit of who Jesus is. And so there's another person that's mentioned in this text, and that guy is Peter. Peter is an interesting fellow. Let's go to John 13 real quick and see kind of his part that he plays here in this conversation. John 13, 6 through 9. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Jesus replied, you do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand. No, said Peter, you shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. So Peter's an interesting character because Peter's this guy who is, I would imagine that probably a lot of us can relate to Peter. We like the stories of Peter because it sounds very familiar. Peter is a guy who is pretty impulsive. He would just kind of say things, do things. Peter's this guy that he had sort of this religious enthusiasm about himself where he always had to be kind of the first, all right? So if we go to like John chapter 21, the last chapter in the book of John, and the disciples are out fishing, they're out on a boat, and they see Jesus on the shore, Peter's the one who actually jumps out of the boat, swims over to Jesus. And then whenever the disciples bring the boat into shore, he runs back to the boat, he gets the big net of fish, and he brings them to Jesus. Peter's the guy who jumps out of the boat to walk on water with Jesus. So Peter is this guy who almost has this sort of like, I've got to be better than the other disciples. You know, have you ever met people like that where it's like you're a Christian, but they're a Christian. Like they wear it out there, and it's just like, you know, and they want you to know that like they're the most holy person sitting in the room. Like that was probably a little bit of where Peter comes from. So if we go back to this scenario here, this situation of the washing of the feet, it's very, again, it's very unconventional. It's very uncomfortable. This is awkward. This is weird for the disciples to see this because they've never seen this before. Teachers don't wash their disciples' feet. And so Peter, at first, when he sees this happening, if you notice, he is the only one that spoke up. And he's like, no, Jesus, you're not going to wash my feet. Are you kidding me? He rejected that. How many of you guys, changing gears a little bit, how many of you like giving gifts? You just like giving gifts, like not just on Christmas or birthdays, but you just like giving gifts to people. All right. Now, how many of you guys get awkward when somebody gives you a gift? Why? Isn't that weird? Like, think about, who said it? Somebody said pride. Yes. Think about it. It's like, I'm fine to give you a gift. I'm fine to go buy you lunch, but if you want to buy my lunch, no, it ain't happening here. You want to get me a gift? No. You give that to somebody else who really deserves the gift. Don't give it to me because I'm good. I don't really need it. And I think what happens is, in that scenario, there's a little bit of pride that makes it hard for us to be able to receive. Because when you're on the receiving end, you might appear to be in need. Like, why did you give me this? do I look like I need it? Thank you, but, And even the thank yous get really weird because you're like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to say. Thank you? Is that enough? Am I supposed to give you something in return? I don't know what I'm doing here. And so we get really vulnerable. We get really awkward sometimes when people want to do something good for us. And I know for me, for a fact, it's because of pride. And so Jesus, when he goes to wash Peter's feet, Peter immediately, no, you should not be doing this. And I don't know if it maybe clicked in his mind like, we should have offered to wash his feet, and they didn't. I have no idea. But Peter rejects it. And so pride can be a funny thing because we could look at somebody who is very prideful, and they wear it on their sleeves. They're just out parading, and they're tearing people down, and you just know that they think that they're the man, that they think that they are it. And when we see that, it's like we identify, that is pride, that is ugly, I reject that. But for many of us, I would be willing to bet that probably most of us, there is this inward pride that we have, but because we're prideful, we don't want to admit it. It's there when it comes out in situations like this when somebody wants to do something for us. And so some of us wear pride on our sleeves, and some of us hide it in our hearts. See, pride doesn't always parade itself. Pride can actually be a silent killer. So, can I tell you a story? Thank you. Cool. So, this is about maybe 2 months ago. We were having staff lunch, and I'm not the healthiest of eaters. Like, I'm a fast food guy, and I know that I have an issue with being disciplined to eat well. But I was determined, I was on this little, like I'm going to eat healthy. And so I prepared myself this really nice, big, beautiful-looking salad. And I remember thinking, man, I sure hope that nobody acknowledges that I'm eating a salad. And I even said it to one of the staff members, like, hey, I hope that, I just get awkward sometimes because, when people point this, it just makes me feel weird. So I hope that nobody notices that I'm eating a salad. And sure enough, I walk into the lunch table there, and sure enough, somebody's like, that is a beautiful salad. You are eating a salad. Good for you. Great job, for eating a salad. And I remember, I don't even remember what I said, but, it was just like, blah, 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 and it just came out. Because what happened was this. The very fact that somebody acknowledged that I eat a salad showed me that they noticed that I normally don't eat salads. I was very vulnerable there because I don't want people to know that I'm not very disciplined about eating healthy. I'm not good at it. And so it revealed that part of me that I don't want people to see, and there it was right out there in the open. So I learned 2 things there in that situation. One, I really do need to eat more salads. People notice when I don't. And 2 was that I have an issue with pride. I know that I have this issue with pride, but it always stays inside there. And when somebody, again, that's how my weird mind works, is like I've got this salad, so now that you're pointing this out, you know that I don't eat healthy, and blah, 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 blah. And so it was all the gears were going there. And so now I have this other issue that I have to deal with. I've really got to deal with this pride issue. Why couldn't I have just been like, yeah, I am eating a salad. Thanks. Because, again, I felt vulnerable and awkward and weird, and it came out in such a crude and not cool way. So sometimes that's exactly what pride does. It comes out weird like that. It makes us feel weird. Or maybe you've been a part of a team at work with your coworkers or in your family, and somebody has a great idea, and you think to yourself, maybe you don't say it, but you think inwardly, "Aw, I wish I had that idea. I wish I had the people saying, hey, great job," and all the accolades. But you don't say anything, but it's there. And eventually it's going to come out in some ugly way. Or maybe just you don't like to admit that you're wrong. And so you may not lash out on people when you've said something wrong or you've done something wrong. You may not lash out, but yet you change the subject. And you're you don't even go there to acknowledge what you've done. So pride not only does it we wear it on our sleeves and it's out there and it's ugly, but it's inside and it's equally as ugly. And so there's an element of the story that we need to look at in the book of Luke. John doesn't talk about this, but Luke does. And so what's happening right now is in the book of Luke, it's the Passover meal. The disciples have already eaten of the meal, and they've already even taken communion at this point. And then it says right after communion in Luke 22:24, it says a dispute arose among them as to which of them was considered to be the greatest. Imagine this scenario. Jesus, who is just hours away from being crucified for these guys, they're sitting around in a circle like I'm better than you. No, I'm better than you. Well, which one of us is the best here, you know? Imagine the conversation. Maybe Peter's like, hey, any of you guys walk on water recently? Because I did. You guys all sat in the boat, but I got out and I walked on the water. Did you see that? Maybe Matthew brings it up in their face. Hey, I was a tax collector. I had all this money, all this prestige. I was awesome. I had it all. I gave it all away to follow Jesus. Like I'm sure they all had their own stories as to why the one was better. But imagine Jesus listening to this conversation. Maybe this is the very reason why he decided. Maybe he had another lesson planned for the disciples. But when he heard this conversation, it's like, no, I'm going to wash their feet. Because they still don't get this whole servanthood thing yet. They still don't get this whole humility thing yet. And so then he washes their feet. C.S. Lewis says this: according to Christian teachers, the essential vice, the utmost evil is pride. Unchastity, anger, greed, drunkenness, and all of that are mere flea bites in comparison. It was through pride that the devil became the devil. Pride leads to every other vice. It is the complete anti-God state of mind. So if we have pride, Jesus can't establish himself fully in our lives because the pride will keep him out. So let's just go back for a second and look. Remember Peter's response. No, Jesus, no. You're not going to wash my feet. You can't wash my feet. You, Jesus, wash? No. But then Jesus' response, then unless I wash you, you have no part with me. So let's get back into the conversation. John 13:9. So in response to what Jesus said there, that unless I wash you, you have no part with me, Peter responds, then Lord, Simon Peter replied, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. Jesus answered, those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. So what Jesus is talking about here is what we call, sort of in the Christian circle, as sanctification. And so there's a definition here that we found. It says that the work of God's free grace, whereby we are renewed in the whole man after the image of God, and are enabled more and more to die to sin and to live unto righteousness. That is sanctification. In other words, it is God working in us to become more like him. So what Jesus was establishing was this. He was saying, like, those who have already had a bath, they're clean. The only thing that needs to be cleaned is their feet. So in ancient times, again, when they were walking around the dirty, dusty roads of Jerusalem, getting their feet dirty, like, you didn't have showers, right? So you were lucky to shower or take a bath once a week, once every other week, once a month maybe. Like you would often have to walk to a pool or a lake or a standing body of water there, a river, whatever, and you would have to walk from your house to get to this place to bathe. And so when you would come up out of there and dry off and you put your clothes on, you put your sandals back on, you would walk your way back to your house on the dirty, dusty roads of Jerusalem. So what would get dirty? Your feet. On the journey back from the bath to your house, your feet would get dirty. And so what Jesus was saying when he said that if you've had a bath, you're already clean. That if you've accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior in your life, he's got you. You're already saved. You're taken care of. So just like all of the disciples except for Judas, he said, you guys, you're all clean. All of you are clean except for one. And again, that was Judas, who never really quite got Jesus. He said, you're clean. But he was telling Peter here, because Peter, again, in his impulsiveness and in his just who he is, he has to come up with, well, no, not just my feet, but my hands and my head also, like my whole body. But Jesus is like, no, just your feet, because you've chosen to follow me. I see that. But this world makes you dirty. This journey that you're on from salvation, when you first got that bath, to where you are now, you've been walking in a dirty place. This world gets ugly. We fall in pits, we step in puddles, and we just get a little messy. And so what he was saying is like, we don't have to just keep coming to Jesus every time we've sinned. Like, no, he expects that. He just wants us to come to him when we're dirty, when we're messy, and allow him just to wash over us. So our pride will cause us to miss Jesus. So I ask you today, what is it that you need to come clean with? Because if we go back to what C.S. Lewis was saying when it comes to pride, like, that is the sin that leads to all other vices. What are your vices? What are those things that keep getting you caught up? Is it an addiction? Is it anger? Is it jealousy? What is it? Because I bet you if you're honest with yourself right now and you begin to dissect that in your mind, you will see that the root of that is pride. It's there. Now let's talk about foot washing for a second. So when it came to Jesus doing this, he's not saying that anytime that you sin or you struggle, you need to go get your feet washed. Jesus is not going to come down from heaven, come down, wash your feet every time you mess up, right? That's not going to happen. But what he does want us to do is he wants us to allow him access into our life. Where we recognize that, yeah, you know what? I have gotten a little messy. I have messed up. I've gotten a little dirty. And I need you and only you to wash me. We need to come to that place where daily we're allowing his Holy Spirit just to wash over our lives and to clean us up. So let's be honest. Foot washing, it's pretty nasty. But how would you respond if I told you that today we're going to end this service by having a foot washing ceremony? That in fact, right outside those doors, our welcome team, they have basins of water, they have towels all loaded up, and they're going to come in when I say they're going to come in. They're going to come through those doors, and they're going to line up here. And we want to ask you guys to come on up and have your feet washed. My guess is this, is that especially those of you in the back who have better access to those doors, you would be like, boom! You would be gone. Thanks, Frank. Because washing feet's disgusting. Now, I know a lot of you here, and I know your hearts. And I believe that your hearts would be that, you know what? I have no problem washing other people's feet because I get to see how so many of you just have servants' hearts, and it's so encouraging and inspirational, and I love it. So I would be willing to bet that most of you don't have a problem washing other people's feet. But maybe it's you letting other people wash your feet. Because you're like, you know what? I know what's inside here. What's inside these shoes? It stinks. It's smelly. It's bad. I've got warts. I've got bunions. It's disgusting. I have new socks on today, and I haven't clipped my toenails in a while. And I know once I pull that sock off, all the sock fuzz is going to be in there. It's gross. And you're probably going to be thinking, you know, I don't want somebody else to see that because next Sunday when I'm out there walking around in the lobby, they're going to be like, oh, that's the guy with the sock fuzz. That's the one with that crazy bunion. It's disgusting. They're going to remember that about me forever. And we so often just don't want people to see that ugly side of us. The side that stinks. The side that's messy. And if I could be honest, there's some times where I really don't even want Jesus to see that part of me. Because it's that pride that's inside of me that's hanging on to control. That's hanging on to some sort of image. That's hanging on to some sort of security that whenever I feel tempted or struggling or whatever, I go back to that. And I know that if I actually say, God, come on in and clean that up, I know that it's going to take some time and it's going to take a lot of tears to work through that, for him to sanctify me and clean me up. And sometimes I just don't want to go through it, and I'm okay with being where I'm at. And we live in our stink and our mess. And especially the older that I get, I'm not as willing to let people in that way and let people see that side of me. How many of you guys can agree with that? We just get set in our ways. It's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to allow awkward situations to kind of happen all around us. It's difficult. So, share with you a story, last story. Many of you guys remember Jim and Beth Loddick, right? Jim and Beth, they moved to San Diego. Well, back when my wife and I bought our house that we're in currently right now, we didn't have kids at the time, and we had Beth and Jim over, and they had just the boys. I'm not even sure that the girls were born yet, but the boys were just little binkers. And we had this big dirt pile in our backyard because we had at one point in time, there was a hole dug out for a pool, and we just wanted to fill in that hole. So it was just dirt there, no grass seed, just dirt piled up. And so we're like, well, we're going to hang out in here and talk with Beth and Jim. So boys, you want to go play out there in the dirt? Because boys love dirt, right? Right? Yeah. Go out there, get a little dirty. And so we let them go out and just play in the dirt. And I went out there, I got them all set up, little shovels or little things to kind of dig in the dirt. I think we even had some toys or something at the time, and we took out there. And then I made a very rookie mistake. Again, I wasn't a dad. Because sometimes, when you're in dirt, you need a little bit of water to form things, right? To make a little bit of, make it a little bit more pliable and stuff. And so I said to Noah and Gabe, I said, all right, guys, you see that hose over there on the house? If you want to make a little bit of dirt to make it pliable so you can play with it, if you want to maybe cut like a little river into your mountains that you're forming, or put like a little pool in there, dig out some dirt and put some water in there, why don't you go over there to that hose, pull it over here, and just turn it on. Get a little bit of dirt. Rookie mistake. It was about 15 minutes later when we get a knock on the patio door. Noah and Gabe are standing there from foot to head covered in mud. They bathed in it. Their clothes, their legs, their arms, their hair, it was just all over them. And they stood there knocking, smiles on their faces. Hey, Dad! They were proud of the mess that they made, which then soon ended the conversation with Jim and Beth because they had to take their boys home to clean them up because they weren't anticipating them getting messy at our house. But what I loved about that story and the image that is always there is just of them standing there covered, smiling. Look at me, I made a mess. Clean me up. And so, again, if we go back to what we were talking about earlier, about how when it comes to our faith, when it comes to us as believers in Christ, we are required and charged by God to be childlike. In fact, if we're not, we cannot inherit his kingdom. We cannot be a part of him. And so, it's okay if you feel a little awkward with God sometimes. Because you might look at your life and say, I've made a big mess of this, and I don't even know that God could even fix it. He can. He can clean you up. You might be ashamed because, again, whatever it is, that thing that gets you all messy, that might be something where you find security in that. You find maybe even a little bit of joy in that, but yet you know it's not right. But Jesus is saying this, that if I'm going to have any part of you, I need full access. I need to see what's inside your shoes. I need to see the stink. I need to see the mess. I need to see what's gross, what you think is gross. I don't think it is. What I want to do is I want to get in there and I want to clean it up. And we get in there, we take our shoes off, and Jesus gets in there with the file. A little bit of pedicures going on, right? He cleans us up. He gets all that sock fuzz out of there. All that stuff that we're ashamed of and embarrassed about, he gets in there, he cleans all that up. And he makes us new again. It says in Titus starting in verse 3. It wasn't so long ago that we ourselves were stupid and stubborn, dupes of sin, ordered every which way by our glands, going around with a chip on our shoulder, hated and hating back. But when God, our kind and loving Savior, God, stepped in, he saved us from all of that. It was all of his doing. We had nothing to do with it. He gave us a good bath, and we came out of it new people, washed inside and out by the Holy Spirit. Our Savior, Jesus, poured out new life so generously. God's gift has restored our relationship with him and given us back our lives. And there's more life to come, an eternity of life. You can count on this. So if you're here today and there is just that thing that you have been struggling with, that area of your life that is just unclean, where you have not yet given God full access, I just invite you right now, take just a few seconds. Close your eyes if you need to. Search your heart. Is there an area of my life that is not clean? Is there an area of my life that I have not given Jesus full access of? I've invited him in. I've been to the altar. I've prayed. I seek him. But yet there's this other thing over here that I'm dealing with. And I haven't truly given him full access to come in and clean me up. What is that thing? You can open your eyes. See, there's another element to the story here of Jesus washing the disciples' feet. This really was a precursor to the cross. So here Jesus is laying down his reputation, all of that, so that he could teach this lesson to his disciples by washing their feet. In a few hours, he's going to be led away, betrayed by Judas, arrested by the guards, taken on trial, beaten, mocked, scorned, rejected, crucified. The whole foot washing ceremony, this was just a precursor, because what he's saying, as a servant, I'm laying down my life. I'm showing you that right now, your master is going to get down and scrub your feet because I love you. And a few hours later, he's going to be up there on the cross, showing them ultimately what it looks like to lay down your life for your sheep. So whatever that thing is that maybe you're holding on to and really haven't given God full access to, it's okay to bring it to him. It's okay to be a little awkward. It's okay to be a little embarrassed by God. He already sees it anyways, right? He knows what's there. He knows what's inside these shoes. All we have to do is just let him in. Let him in to clean up. And it might require you getting to the point of putting aside your pride and all of your years of knowledge and wisdom and what you've grown to understand, and allow yourself to be a little vulnerable. Allow yourself to be a little open to what he's going to do. Because again, it's the children who will inherit the kingdom. And unless we become as children, we can't have any part with him. Frederick Buechner says this: if it seems a childish thing to do, do it in remembrance that you are a child. So let's close our eyes. Let's just pray.